happening today. We just have one big thing on the agenda, more or less, but just to kind of go through. So we are going to be talking about the proposed community reinvestment area extension and the tax increment financing structure for the former Quality Insight at 4747 Montgomery Road. So I'd like to just kind of go over everything for anyone listening, kind of the total plan, the CRA, tip, all of that, and then go into the financing. Just kind of give us all the info, and then we can ask questions as we go. Sound good? Anyone want to volunteer to talk first?
Nick Lingenfelter with PLK Communities. Do I need to give my address or am I good? I'm just checking. So, everyone's a little different. From a high level, we obviously acquired the property last fall. I want to say that was late third quarter. We have since completed the large majority of the remediation. So obviously the building's down, the asbestos is down. We've completed now 32 sets of borings on the site. So we're still in the midst of trying to figure out exactly where all the perk from the dry cleaner was. We've isolated the location we believe actually to be in the road. So we're working through that right now to see how that cleanup needs to occur. That's kind of step one, is how do we make sure we can actually build residential here and get our agreements with the EPA. Step number two will be, how is our access going to occur? So as we've discussed a few times in the past, that was formerly a Frisch's Hotel. So Frisch's has easements all the way across the property and all the way around the old hotel, which means the restaurant technically has access to everything but the old hotel footprint. We've been meeting with them down in Florida for the past couple months to ultimately get them to agree to waive those easements in return for adding a road there. So step number two for us is to be adding a road that divides the two properties, because if Frisch's can have public access to a road, which is why they actually cut all the way across, they're willing to let those easements go away. So we have submitted that to the Planning Commission for next month to at least get verbal approval to add that road there. We can then sign an agreement with them. Yes, ma'am.
Visually, the road would be between the Frisch's building and where Quality Inn used to be.
Correct,
and
yes.
It would be a road as in a street.
Literally a street, yes.
Okay.
It'd be privately designed and built by us, but it would be built to public standards.
Thank you.
We can then, yes, sir.
From Montgomery Road to, what road is behind, what road is that behind?
Crown.
Station?
We have.
Station.
Yeah,
So
correct, the
from
station's
Montgomery to
outside,
Station?
yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there was historically a road there, but right now, because we basically would be cutting off their access.
Well, they had an access on Station. Can't they just open that?
Well,
there
that's
wasn't.
the only access that's there right now is the utility easements, it's the backside of it.
Okay.
So unfortunately, that's really none of ours, it's really the utility companies.
Do you remember, does anybody here know how it used to be? There's a gate there now, right? I mean,
There is a gate there, correct, that most people used to cut through.
Yeah.
But ultimately for them, that they truly want a hard road. So,
Okay, right.
And the reason why was, unfortunately, none of the current owners were around when that deal was struck. So if you're somebody living in Florida and Georgia and other places that are currently located,
Right.
they're looking at it going, what are we giving up and what are you giving us, or it's not going away. So in their mind, if we can truly create some type of in and out that's truly a road, we actually shut down the other stoplight. We're working the city on that and moving it down. It would allow us to basically bisect the two properties.
Okay.
By doing that, we would then technically have about a rectangle we can develop on. And then the backside, that lower half of that road, we would do some type of residential down there as well to kind of truly make it a through street to fit the neighborhood.
Does that leave you enough room for your development?
We would have enough room for our development, yes. We still have to build a parking garage. So right now at a high level, we're targeting around 200 residential units. I think we had 208 in there. And then we're looking at ground floor retail of about 8,000 square feet. So we would have retail on Montgomery that would be built to Montgomery. And then behind it, we would have our building. So, but using that road allows us to have true retail access. That's the other issue that creates. By having the road come through the property, we can now tell our retail tenants that they have true access all the way around the site. Because if we're asking retail tenants to put their retail front out on Montgomery Road, but have no access to the back of their building for their semis, deliveries, tenants, everything else, they're never going to sign a lease there And part of our agreement requires us to build retail. So we can't just have 8,000 square feet sitting empty. We need to make sure that they truly have access to all sides of it. There's a full plan that Noah's been working on with us as well. But just again, at a high level, I just wanted to kind of give you like step 1, step 2, step 3. So it's clean up the site while we're getting our final tests and figuring out where the final remediation needs to occur. We've submitted to then put that road in as well. And then step 3 is the actual physical building. So the design of that building right now, given current architectural timeframes, is no less than 6 months. So our current agreement, the sooner we sign it, the sooner we sign it and get our road approved, the sooner we can start drawing. We want to break ground by March. Originally, we wanted to break ground this fall. But given just kind of how long everything's taken to get done through all the various groups, we're looking at a March start. But for a March start, that means all approvals, roads, everything must be done in the next basically 60 to 75 days, or we're not even starting in March. So we're pushing as hard as we can, but from a high level, it will be residential units. We don't have a unit mix. Honestly, we stopped drawing because we're like, until we have this and we know exactly what we can do, it doesn't make sense to keep putting money into it. So at the moment, other than a road plan and a sketch that we did in-house, we have nothing. So, but that's where we're at the current time.
One more question, please?
Yes, sir?
So I must have missed it. So what is it that they don't, so no, you said that they wouldn't have access to the back of the building, your tenants, if to ask them to rent from you, but they wouldn't have access to the back. Why wouldn't they have access to the back? Explain it. Did I miss that?
So right now, because right now we're corner of Montgomery and Maple, right? And Maple's a one-way out only. So if you're a retail tenant,
Oh, okay.
so like we're actually working with JMA, the city's consultant, saying how do we make both sides of this 2 ways? Because if we don't, commercial tenants just won't sign a lease. So as much as our residents would, but if we expect any type of commercial retail to physically go in there, it's not happening.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's one
yeah.
way. So,
I mean-
but that road.
That road will help us create that, and then we're also, the city's exploring other options on Maple
Gotcha,
as well.
gotcha. Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else I can answer at the moment?
With trying to get the easements from Frisch's, I saw in the report that you're hoping to have a decision by the end of the month, the 31st, is that still the case?
From Frisch's?
Yeah.
So Frisch's has already verbally told us they're okay,
Okay.
but we cannot sign Frisch's until we know that the city's okay. So that's why we're actually, I think we're June 7th, I want to say it's the planning commission, 6th or 7th. So once we have that hopeful okay from the planning commission, we can go back to Frisch's and document it. I'll call it soft documentation, because it'll probably read something upon the road being completed and dedicated on and on and on, then this will go away.
No promise.
Yes, they've all verbally agreed to it, which has been, it's been good, so it takes a while. Yes, sir.
So the reason we're here is to talk about tax abatement.
Correct, the CRA abatement, yes, sir.
Tax abatements are in the CRA, and tomorrow night in the CRA and the TIF. The purpose of the CRA, the purpose of the TIF is to encourage economic development in a place where it was unlikely to happen. And just on those lines, if you don't mind this, ballpark how much money has been involved in acquisition, demolition, and remediation in order to get the property to the point where you can actually build something on it?
I venture to guess it's at least $4 million right now. I don't have a rough number. I would also say too, we still have escrowed about $470,000 in cleanup still remaining. So even now that we have identified it, we're going to have to go underground. It's a lot of money because you have to have guys in suits, and depending on what it is, it has to go to controlled fills and controlled barrels. It's not just going off to certain fills. So unfortunately, it's a lot of money still to go. So yes, we had the acquisition. We had about $1.1 million in demolition, roughly. To date, that was demolition asbestos, and then we've had the additional testing on top of it. We hope that should clean it all up. Based on our experience with the EPA and talking to them, that should be enough to get it to move forward. But at that point, we're talking at well over $1 million an acre in costs, when it's normally $300,000 in this area. So it's a lot more money that we've had to significantly invest into it. And also to get the density and get the retail that everybody wants, it's going to take a parking garage, which is running about $45,000 a space right now. So it will be a pretty significant investment to get that portion of the business district done right, that you don't always get back in rent. So. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Segue to the TIF abatement. Good afternoon. Andy Burris with Bradley Paint Advisors. So what's a little bit different about this incentive package, I guess, if you will, it's very similar to what we did with Factory 52, with the exception that with this redevelopment site, there will not be any bonds financed. And so we're going to have a 30-year TIF that is, we've been negotiating with the school district on. So within the first 15 years, there is no reimbursement to the school district. And that's because we're going to overlay the 15-year 100% CRA. So in essence, they are self-financing the improvements that need to happen. We're not going to be issuing a bond on that. And so, again, overlay 15-year 100% CRA, no taxes are being paid. Years 16 to 30, the TIF is still in place, and then the school district, as part of the agreement, will then get compensated. Whatever revenues are coming in at that point in time will go to the school district, both them and the Career Center. The school district can only get, so we've got to do a calculation each year to see what they missed out on. And so as we go through this, they are only allowed to get up to what they would have gotten had there not been an incentive there, taking the revenues away. So we'll watch that. I'm sure I'll be around in year 16, but if not, we'll have somebody here to take care of that and watch that calculation for everybody and update that as we go along. That in a nutshell, you guys are TIF experts now, so any questions relative to that or the CRA at all? Pretty straightforward.
I just wanted to clarify that at year 16, the school will be getting the tax based on what it is at year 16.
They'll be getting, so there'll be a calculation done on the value at that point in time.
At that point in time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then whatever comes off that in terms of the calculation of the tax revenue, the majority goes to the school, very small goes to the Career Center.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll run that out until they make sure that they get compensated through the rest of the TIF life. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, because the school district will receive all of the full 100% abated amount from year 16 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
And so that picks up what they would, a big chunk of that would be school district taxes anyway. A little bit is the city, and it's the zoo, and the county, and whatever else is there.
That's correct.
And over the, is that 15 years, whether in real dollars or actual dollars, is that 15 years under the TIF, what is the relationship to that, to what it would be without any abatement? If they were to get the school districts were to get the full amount, is it about the same, or is it less? I mean, just if you can give me, I'm just curious what the rough allocation of that is.
I would tell you that the analysis we did, with the tax law changes recently, the city could do a 15-year 75% CRA, and then the schools would get their share on the 25% value that wasn't exempted. When we ran that analysis compared to this deal, when working with the school district, they're getting more than they would have gotten under that scenario. So working together helped them out. In relation to your question about, is it if there was never a TIF in the compensation, I haven't run those numbers. I think it's probably pretty close, but I don't think we ever catch them up 100% to what they would have gotten. But that's assuming the incentive wasn't needed to help it go along, right? And so I think, you got a number tonight. Was that school district only, or was that in total? Because I've got, I think, in total taxes, what's coming off the site now.
So what I have,
Or before.
is that the 9,000?
Yeah, I've got 9,200 is roughly what they hit, what's coming off the site currently.
Oh, I've got 9,900, but,
Yeah, it changes a little bit with,
yeah.
but the school district share is going to be, probably 67% of that. So obviously, more revenue come off that site than what was there before.
Yeah, I without an incentive, there wouldn't be anything there wouldn't
That's
be any
correct.
taxes to generate at all. I was just kind of curious, like how close is that going to end up being if the full 15 goes straight to the schools, but the first 15 don't? So that's all. It was just more.
If somebody wants to get up and talk, I can do the calculation for a little bit, but.
I'd say if it was significantly less than what they'd be entitled to get, they'd still be better off than if we didn't, because I don't know if anybody would ever do anything with that site.
And in fact, I think everybody came along discussion after discussion was what kind of incentive is going to be there because everybody needed it.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the numbers? All right. I'm not sure who's up next. Anybody else?
No. Heard a bit about it for the developer, but we all have been at this pretty much since August when the property was purchased. I think even within a month or so, we were talking about the tax abatements in different scenarios. And I think at that time, you know, obviously the mitigation cost, demolition was quite high. And then I believe late November, it was taken to council for initial consideration. You know, obviously we had a presentation. I think the structure of the agreements hasn't really changed much in the last 6 months that we were kind of, you know, fine tuning it. So at this point, all of us have been working on it for a considerable time. So at this point, you see what has occurred on the site, and you know, I'd like to think generally staff is supportive of it. So.
So Catherine Fitzgerald with Alloy Development and also contract for economic development services. So I can say that I personally, because this was privately owned site, we were made aware that it was going to go to public auction. I personally called local developers for interest. There was none, unfortunately. And Mike and I both fielded some, what you would say, not highest and best use for the site, and a lot of reuse types of proposals that probably wouldn't be great for the city. In the calculations with this, the gap that's identified, the incentive still doesn't match the gap, so it's still costing the developer money. So, you know, I can just say that we're very excited. We think it's a home run for the city, and obviously there's so much buzz with Factory 52 that, you know, we're pretty thankful that PLK stepped up.
Can you talk a little bit, I thought that was good, in the enterprise's reasons for requesting tax incentives. So it said if there was no tax incentive or anything, the annual return on investment would be negative 0.02%. And so with this, which again, incentive, right? So is that still correct? So with an annual return on investment of 7.3%?
I'll let Nick comment on that, but they do have on this summary from Frost Brown Todd, the last page has a project cost analysis with the gap highlighted here.
Yeah.
It's highlighted at 175 units. Nick's now talking about 200 units, so the gap is even a little bit larger than that.
Sorry, what page are you on, Catherine?
I believe you received this memo, the Frost Brown Todd, the last page. I think Nick can speak more specifically, but what I just heard him say was 200 units. In the CRA, there's a range of units. So 150 to 220. But yeah, so the estimated abatement still doesn't make up the gap. Thank you.
I was just going to add to that, those additional units really don't have much profitability because of the amount of parking we have to build for it. What it does is create density. So by having additional density in the business district, it really kind of creates additional mass. So if you figure every one of those requires a structured parking space, and if it's 2 bedrooms, it's 2 spaces, I mean, you're adding $90,000. But we believe to really, again, because we've agreed to build the retail, we need to make the retail successful. So a lot of it feeds into how do we make that work, and then put up as much as we can to truly create density in the business district. Because ultimately, when you kind of see some of the road plans and things we've been working on with everybody, it really is to help bring that down the district. This building we also overlaid in the community entertainment district that we laid on a couple months ago, specifically so we can start bringing that down Montgomery Road. So if Montgomery Road is going to be successful, we need as much as we can get here. Yeah.
Sorry, mine's a weird question about parking. Is it 1-to-1 or do we?
Every unit's different. So a studio, you go about 1.1. Typically a 1, we're seeing about a 1.25, 1.25 to 1. A 2, you're going to want 175-ish. So we have our different ratios for every unit type we put in. And at the end of the day,
Is that a PLK thing, or is that?
that's just a typical development. So architects and engineers have different ratios they work with. When we go suburban, it's usually at least no less than 1 per bedroom. So if you have a 3-bedroom unit, we're going to make sure we have 3 spaces. You're not typically seeing that in a more urban setting. So in a more urban setting, the reason why we have, say, like, why is it 1.25 to 1? Well, you're actually seeing a lot of couples rent 1 bedrooms now. So when we kind of make those adjustments and figure out what we need to do for each specific site, and then not overload the neighborhood. The goal is everything is self-contained.
So you'll have over 400 parking spaces then?
With the retail, yes. So in a retail specifically, you're about 1 per 150. So it's going to be
Say
decent.
that number
So you want, like, depending on the retail use. So if it's a coffee shop, you might be 1 parking space for every 150 to 200 square feet of coffee shop.
Oh, by
So we'll actually have to go
square
into each one of those uses and figure out how much we need for each use as well.
It's fun math, thank you.
Are you guys gonna do any kind of traffic studies or anything kind of once you get your designs going?
So we've done a preliminary traffic analysis to figure out like how we worked it, how we would kind of lay out the site. The city actually had done a traffic study, I want to say in the last 2 years. So we were able to piggyback a lot of what JMA had already done, working on the Montgomery corridor. So we had traffic counts. They had actually made a lot of recommendations that we were looking to do as well. And the majority of our traffic is actually designed whenever we get it drawn. That is, once you use that new road, it's actually going to feed right into our property, and it should stay off of the neighborhood streets.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are you using the same architect firm to draw these plans that you did for,
No, this one's going to be MA, so it's we had MSA down there, MA is over here, so it's a slightly different firm. Everybody's kind of project specific, so that's much more of a district creating that flow, which is what MSA specializes in. MA does a lot more urban infill, and how do we get a building that looks right and fits the neighborhood there. So.
my brother works for another firm, so.
No.
He drew.
No, so it's, yeah, they're kind of overloaded at the moment. So actually, they're not even going to do our next building down there. They just can't even take it on.
Okay,
So that's why I was talking about lead times. I mean, they were telling us we had to wait 3 months to even get a bid.
okay.
So,
Gotcha. Thank you.
yep.
Any other questions, thoughts, info?
Who names the street, Nick?
It's just an extension. I don't think we named anything.
Oh.
So that's ground, it's going to be ground. That's all this is, the ground. If not, it's our marketing department. It's extended.
Yeah, no, that would make sense to make it nice.
All right, anything else, any other? No? All right, well, thank you, everyone, for coming and all the work. I know everyone's super excited to see it. I know we get pictures, and my daughter goes to preschool there, and so they loved the crane and all that, so we've been watching it progress. But all right, we'll wrap up, and then we'll have this for council tomorrow night, ready to go. Okay, thank you. All done, Steve.